So I met Mikey in the early days of consciousness hacking, and we had a lot of similar interests, and he invited me to collaborate on some of his interactive art installations, and it was super exciting for me. I didn't really know this field existed, and this was about 3 years ago, and it combined all my interests of signal processing, music, physiology, healing, so it was just a major wow for me. So then I started looking at heart rate variability biofeedback in particular. One of the projects was using a lot of math and signal processing for HRV. And I saw that there was 25 years of clinical studies. It originated in Russia, and it's not really widely known. So locally in California, HeartMath has become a very popular brand, and they have a consumer version of these training tools. And Prana Wave technology was kind of born out of this response. So heart rate variability, for those of you that don't know, is the time between the heartbeats. So this is an electrocardiogram, and so the time speeds up and slows down, and this is a reflection of what's happening in the autonomic nervous system. There's a lot of complex circuitry that I'll gloss over later. And essentially, HRV is a reflection of stress, health, and performance. So it kind of tells you how is your body's capacity to respond to the stressors of life and to adapt with resiliency, or with low HRV, not enough resiliency for wellness. Okay, so this is a picture of the Prana Wave. This is a heart rate variability wave, and this is a state called resonance, which I'll get back to later. But this is sort of a time frequency, so it shows the time and it gives you the color feedback on the frequency, and it uses sound. So I'll give a demo of that later if things are working properly, and during breakout session I'll have a couple of stations set up as well for people to come play with it. I first heard about heart rate variability about 8 years ago. I was at my doctor's office and she was taking my vitals, and she commented, "Oh, you have a really strong respiratory sinus arrhythmia." And I was like, "Oh crap, arrhythmia? What's that?" And so I was too embarrassed to ask what it was, but I went home and Googled it nervously, and it turns out that respiratory sinus arrhythmia is normal. So sinus means that it goes up and down like a sine wave, and arrhythmia just means changes in rhythm. So it's the changes in your heartbeat as you breathe, it goes up and down. So it's actually a very good thing. It's an indicator of the health in your nervous system, particularly something called vagal tone. So tonicity is defined as the state of healthy tension or partial contraction, think like muscle tone, but it also applies to nerves and blood vessels. So the state of healthy contraction while at rest, which facilitates the response to stimuli in a living system. So it's kind of like an idling engine that's sort of poised for action. So here, the high HRV or vagal tone means that you're less physiologically stressed. Low HRV means you're more physiologically stressed and more prone to have different kind of illnesses, both psychological and physical and emotional. So what is the vagus nerve? So I like to think of it as an information superhighway between the brain and the organs of the body. It's actually a cranial nerve. It originates in the brain. It's cranial nerve 10. And all the cranial nerves are pairs. So there's a left one and a right one. And they crisscross as they go down, which is kind of interesting. So the vagus nerve is the primary effector for the parasympathetic response, that kind of rest and digest, the relaxation response, but it also sends information back up to the brain. So this information superhighway is pretty important. And the way that it connects in the brain, it weaves through all of these structures called the central autonomic network, which is the regulatory function for making decisions, executive function, responding to fear. So it can actually switch off the fight or flight response based on the kind of social context. So it's a very high level control. So the vagus nerve is a cool kind of backdoor to hack into the brain, into the autonomic system. So that's why people are using implants. So it's been FDA approved since the 90s for intractable depression, what else? Epilepsy. There's even one for appetite suppression. But it's a very invasive technology to clamp an electrode on your nerve, and if you get it wrong, it's not pretty. This is a picture of the Kundalini, this mystical life force energy that's spoken about in the East. It's also known in Christian mysticism as the Holy Spirit. And look at the crisscross functioning is very similar to the vagus nerve, the left side and the right side going into the brain. And interestingly, as an aside, women that have paralysis and no sensation in their genitals can experience an orgasm through the vagus nerve, through the stimulation of the cervix. So the vagus nerve is this very important energy pathway that is separate from the spinal cord. So this is a picture of the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic is the same word as autonomous, which means self-governing. So there's a typical dichotomy between parasympathetic on the right and sympathetic on the left. So the sympathetic goes through the spinal cord mostly, and the parasympathetic goes a lot through the vagus nerve. You see there cranial nerve 10 going to all the organs, and then there's a few other bits that are not part of the vagus nerve. And you can think of this dichotomy as gas and brake. And these are all the amazing things that keep us alive that we don't even have to think about. Breathing, blood pressure, digestion, heartbeat. So I just wanted to mention something called Polyvagal Theory. Stephen Porges in the late 90s developed this theory, and it's still being developed. It's used a lot in trauma and psychotherapy. And it's not just the dichotomy of this sympathetic and parasympathetic, but actually this kind of triune evolutionary stack of different layers of the nervous system. So the evolutionarily oldest one, I like to call the worm. And that's the parasympathetic. It's below the diaphragm, the vagus that rests and digests. And when it's under stress, this nerve makes us freeze and play dead. So, if you poke a worm, it kind of just plays dead. So the next evolutionary strata I like to call the reptile. This is the activity, arousal of the sympathetic nervous system. Its job is to go out hunting for food and sex, basically. And when it's under stress, it gives the notorious fight or flight response. So then this third layer in the brain is I like to call the mammal circuit. And so this is also part of the vagus nerve, but it's a newer part that's myelinated so that it can have faster signal transmission. And it connects into the heart, most notably, which I'll get to. And it emotionally regulates all the other circuits. So are you just having a playful challenge, or is it really a life and death situation? So these social contexts, this mammal circuit is in charge of. And it's the vagus nerve that's literally weaving together these three parts of the nervous system. So the vagus nerve is not just the parasympathetic brake action, but it's actually connecting all three. Okay, so back to HRV. So there's two important autonomic reflexes that affect the HRV primarily. So this is a frequency spectrum, so high frequency on the right, low frequency on the left. And so this is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. This is the parasympathetic effect of the breathing on the heart rate. And so there's a vagal circuit that controls the pacemaker to do that. That's the vagal tone. So this kind of idling the engine constantly. It's actually, the brake is constantly engaged. So the pacemaker beats at 100 beats per minute. So it's very fast. But with the vagal tone engaged, we have a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute. So that's always constantly engaged in a healthy system. And people that have diabetic neuropathy, for instance, their heart rate will go up because the vagus nerve is no longer functioning properly. So their vagal tone, this idling brake, basically is busted. So the other important autonomic reflex that is seen in heart rate variability is related to the blood pressure. And this is a sympathetic tone. So this one's parasympathetic and this one's sympathetic, so it's kind of both parts. Actually, there's a little bit of parasympathetic involvement in the blood pressure reflex as well. It's called the Baroreceptor Reflex, so they're like stretch receptors in the blood vessels. So when they get stretched open from standing up or sitting down, it regulates the sympathetic response to harden the walls of the blood vessels so that it can regulate the blood pressure for homeostasis. So people that stand up and sit down and get dizzy, that system's not working properly. Okay, so this baroreflex is a very slow wave. It's seen in the blood pressure fluid, but it's also seen in the craniosacral rhythms and the lymphatic rhythms. So this is where I got the name Prana Wave, because it's this kind of slow life force wave that's unconscious, but it's actually only there when we're awake. So if you're anesthetized, that wave goes away. Let's talk about heart rate variability and biohacking. So a really popular thing that people are measuring today is called RMSSD. And so most people, when they think, oh, what's my HRV score, they're actually kind of referring to this. So it's kind of a quantified self thing that athletes and biohackers, they'll measure it for a minute in the morning, first thing in the morning, and it's a proxy for vagal tone. So it's a statistical formula that calculates a single number. So this is what quantified self biohackers are doing. However, it doesn't really tell you how to improve. It's just measuring something. So there's actually a way that you can improve your heart rate variability by breathing, called resonance breathing. And this is the way to get the maximum possible heart rate variability in one sitting. So it basically stretches out that respiratory sinus arrhythmia circuit. So actually what's happening is if you slow down your breathing, so the breath is under conscious control, but it's also unconscious. So it's this kind of gateway into the unconscious mind. So if you slow down your breathing, the frequency will go lower, 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 lower until you hit this frequency, which is a 10-second approximately breath cycle. At that point, the two are overlapping, the two become one, and I call this autonomic fusion, or kind of polarity fusion. So the gas and the brake are coming into one place, so it's a very special state that you can put yourself in. So when you're in resonance breathing, it's a special pattern of breathing, a special frequency of breathing. I like to think of it as the respiratory sinus arrhythmia is the wind, and the Baroreceptor is the chimes. And when the wind and the chimes come together, you get resonance. So it's a very special state of focus and calm at the same time, and that's basically a flow state. There's technologies that are around to help train these, heart math calls it coherence. I prefer the term resonance. In this state, you're getting maximum oxygen because the blood pressure and the heartbeat are all at the same rhythm. You're in this flow state, and it basically irons out all the kinks in your neurology. So if you have anxiety or depression, it's going to correct that, at least temporarily. It's kind of impossible to hold on to one or the other when you're in this middle zone, in this flow state. And over time, the more you practice this, the more resiliency you get. So it's a neuroplasticity. So it's not just an immediate benefit, but the more you practice it, the more it benefits you in the future. It gives you the capacity to respond to stress. I have two demos that I'm going to give. One of them is a resonance breathing kind of meditation that you can follow along with. And what I'd like you to do is feel your heart, feel your pulse, and you can use your wrist or your neck. That's kind of this ocean sound. So you want to inhale and exhale. And so notice how your heart speeds up and slows down. Speeding up on the inhale, slowing down on the exhale. So this is not a relaxation exercise. This is a flow state. You're calm and relaxed and focused at the same time. So I really want you to feel your pulse and notice how this effect. So what I have here with Prana Wave is a prototype on a desktop, and I'm going to be fundraising and building a team to take it to market as a mobile application. The problem is these heart rate sensors are designed for fitness, not for biofeedback, so there's some timing delays that make it unsuitable. Even though they're accurate, they don't give a real time. So just notice how you feel in this kind of resonant state. This is about a 5.5 breaths per minute. So that's going to put most people in resonance, about 80% get you there. With biofeedback, you can get more 100% there. So what they do in clinics is they'll run people through different frequencies and see which one is your own personal frequency, because everyone has a little bit different.
Tell the story of what the technology is and what your vision for it is and what it does.
Yeah, so it's essentially, I coined the term neurosomatic meditation. So a lot of people are interested in meditation because they want to deal with their stress better. They want to, kick butt at work, and so it's kind of like a gateway drug to meditation for consciousness expansion. People are just looking for, performance enhancement, which is a valid thing that people need. So if you're going to meditate for performance enhancement, this type of neurosomatic meditation is directly targeted to that stress resiliency mechanism. So it's the most bang for your buck. You can do yoga and cuddle and all those great things, which I also recommend. But if you were just to spend 5 minutes, on the Muni, you could do this on your phone once I have the app ready for market. So my vision is that people can take their health into their own hands. They can empower themselves to enhance their nervous system through this very focused neurosomatic meditation practice.
And how does the app work? Like, what's unique about it?
So what's unique about it is that it gives real-time instantaneous feedback, whereas HeartMath kind of gives you like an average over the last 15 seconds or so. You use a Fourier transform. This is using a different kind of better math than HeartMath, essentially. And so it gives you this time domain wave so you can really see what's going on. And the next version is going to have even better training wheels to help people learn this skill. So I want to help people learn this skill, which then they can practice anywhere, even without the app, potentially. But I want to make the app so fun that people continue to use it. So what happens is that the heartbeat is going, so this is like how many beats per minute. So up is faster and down is slower. And with each heartbeat, it plots and it goes ba-boom, 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 and you hear your heartbeat in the app. And the sound, the tone of the heartbeat is modulated, so as it goes up, the pitch goes higher. So it goes boom, 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 boom. So that's actually, I call it multi-dimensional feedback. I just filed a patent for the color and the sound. So it's kind of more of an intuitive limbic delivery rather than having numbers and, is this low, medium, or high? It's just kind of this very intuitive, elegant thing, and yet it has very high-tech math, and it's being explained with very current neurophysiology rather than this kind of hand-waving about the magnetic field of the heart, which in my opinion is kind of pseudoscience. As much as I love woo-woo stuff, I'm all about chakras and multidimensional things, but I don't mix the two. When I talk about science, I make sure it's legit. So then when this color goes bright, it means that you're getting in the target resonance zone. So it's a rewarding feedback. And there's a sound reward that happens as well. It plays a reward soundtrack. So let's say I'm at the dentist's office and I'm getting stressed out. I can breathe in my own special rhythm and put myself in this flow state, which has all kinds of neurological benefits for pain reduction. It helps with asthma. It helps with, so there's so much clinical evidence. I glossed over it, but there's literally 25 years of research into this biofeedback. It's good for epilepsy, depression, irritable bowel syndrome, everything that the vagus nerve touches. So it's really a potential panacea. So that's why I'm so excited about it.
What does it feel like to be in this resonant state?
Well, it feels like I'm getting maximum oxygen to my brain. It feels like a reset button. So if I'm anxious, it resets me. If I'm depressed, it resets me. So it puts you back in that kind of 0 point state, like a clean slate. And then over time, the more that I practice it, the more I can be skillful in life and have smooth neurological responses, make good decision making, executive function. All of that is correlated with this vagal tonicity. So it's not just an immediate benefit, but it's really really adding coin to your resiliency battery, charging your resiliency battery.
Thank you.